Eleazar, one of the leading scribes, a man of advanced age and fine appearance, was being forced to open his mouth and eat pork. But he, welcoming a glorious death in preference to a life of pollution, went up of his own accord to the torture wheel, setting an example of how those should come forward who are steadfast enough to refuse food which it is wrong to taste, even for the natural love of life. Those who were in charge of that unlawful sacrificial meal, because of their long-standing acquaintance with the man, took him aside and privately urged him to bring meat provided by himself, which he could properly make use of, and pretend that he was eating the meat of the sacrifice as the king had ordered, so that by doing this he may escape the death penalty, and on account of his long life friendship with them be kindly treated. But he, Eleazar, making a high resolve worthy of his years and the dignity of his age and the hoary hair which he had reached with such distinction, and his admirable life, even from his childhood, and still more of the holy and divine legislation, declared himself in accord with these, telling them to send him down to Hades at once. For he said, it does not become our time of life to pretend and so lead many young people to suppose that Eleazar, when 90 years old, has gone over to heathenism, and to be led astray through me, because of my pretense for the sake of this short and insignificant life, while I defile and disgrace my old age. For even if for the present I escape the punishment of men, yet whether I live or die, I shall not escape the hands of the Almighty. Therefore, by manfully giving up my life now, I will prove myself worthy of my great age, and leave to the young a noble example of how to die willingly and nobly for the sacred and holy laws. With these words, he went straight to the torture wheel, while those who so shortly before had felt kindly toward him became hostile to him, because the words he had uttered were, in their opinion, madness. As he was about to die under the strokes, he said with a groan, the Lord, in his holy knowledge, knows that though I might have escaped death, I endure dreadful pains in my body from being flogged. But in my heart I am glad to suffer this, because I fear him. And so he died, leaving in his death a pattern of nobility and a memorial of virtue, not only to the young, but to the mass of his nation. It happened that 7 brothers were also arrested with their mother, and were tortured with whips and thongs by the king to force them to taste of the unlawful swine's meat. One of them made himself their advocate and said, what do you expect to ask and learn from us? For we are ready to die, rather than transgress the laws of our forefathers. The king was infuriated and gave orders that pans and cauldrons should be heated. And when they were immediately heated, he commanded that the tongue of the one who had been their advocate should be cut off, and that they should scalp him and cut off his extremities, while his brothers and his mother looked on. And when he was utterly crippled, he ordered them to bring him to the fire and fry him. And as the vapor from the pan spread quickly, they with their mother encouraged one another to die nobly, saying, the Lord God is looking on, and he truly relents towards us, as Moses declared in his song, which bore witness against them face to face, when he said, and he will relent towards his slaves. When the first one had departed in this manner, they brought the second one to be mocked, and they tore off the skin of his head with the hair, and asked him, will you eat, or have your body punished limb by limb? But he replied in the language of his forefathers and answered, no. So he also underwent the same series of tortures as the first suffered. But when he was at his last gasp, he said, you wretch, you release us from this present life, but the King of the world will raise us up, because we have died for his laws, to an everlasting renewal of life. After him, the third was mocked, and when he was told to put his tongue out, he did so quickly and courageously, stretched out his hands, and said nobly, I got these from heaven, and for the sake of its laws, I disregard them, and from it I hope to receive them back again. So that the king himself and those who were with him were amazed at the young man's spirit, because he made light of his sufferings. And when he had departed, they tortured and maltreated the fourth in the same way. And when he was near his end, he spoke thus: It is better to die by men's hands and look for the hopes God gives of being raised again by him. For you will have no resurrection to life. Next they brought up the fifth and maltreated him. But he looked at him and said, Since you have authority among men, though you are mortal, you do what you please. But do not suppose our race has been abandoned by God. But follow your course and see how his mighty power will torment you and your posterity. After him they bought the sixth, and when he was at the point of death, he said, Do not be falsely deceived, for we suffer these things because of ourselves, for we sin against our own God. So these amazing things have happened. But you must not suppose that you will go unpunished for having attempted to fight against God. But their mother was surprisingly wonderful, and deserves a blessed memory. For though she saw her 7 sons perish within a single day, she bore it with good courage, because of her hope in the Lord. And she encouraged each of them in the language of their forefathers. For she was filled with a noble spirit and stirred her woman's heart with manly courage. And she said to them, I do not know how you appeared in my womb, for it was not I that gave you life and breath, and it was not I that brought you into harmony the elements of each. Therefore the Creator of the world, who formed the human race and arranged the generations of all things, will give you back again life and breath in his mercy, as you are now, regardless of yourselves for the sake of his laws. Now Antiochus, thinking he was being treated with contempt and suspecting her reproachful cry, as the youngest still survived, not only appealed to him in words, but also promised him with oaths that he would make him rich and envied if he would give up the ways of his forefathers, and would make him his friend and entrust him with office. But when the youngest man paid no attention to him, the king called the mother to him and urged her to advise the boy to save himself. After he had labored with her for a long time, she undertook to persuade her son. She bent over him, and mocking the cruel tyrant, she spoke this in the language of her forefathers: My son, have pity on me, who carried you 9 months in the womb, and nursed you for 3 years, and brought you up, and brought you to your present age, and supported you. I beseech you, my child, to look up at the heaven and the earth, and see all that is in them, and perceive that God did not make them out of the things that existed. And in that way, the human race came into existence. Do not be afraid of this butcher, but show yourself worthy of your brothers and accept death, so that by God's mercy I may get you back again with your brothers. Before she could finish, the young man said, What are you waiting for? I will not obey the command of the king, but I obey the command of the law that was given to our forefathers through Moses. But you, who have designed every kind of evil against the Hebrews, will not escape the hands of the Most High God, for we are suffering because of our own sins. And though our living Lord is angry for a little while to rebuke and discipline us, he will be reconciled with his own slaves once again. But you, impious man, the vilest of all men, do not foolishly buoy yourself up in your insolence with uncertain hopes, when you raise your hand against the children of heaven. For you have not yet escaped the judgment of the Almighty, all-seeing God. For our brothers, after enduring a brief suffering, have drunk everlasting life under the agreement of God. But you, by the judgment of God, will receive the rightful penalty of your arrogance. I, like my brothers, give up my body and soul for the laws of my forefathers, calling upon God speedily to show mercy to our nation and to lead you to confess in trials and plagues that he alone is God, and to stay through me and my brothers, the wrath of the Almighty, which has justly fallen on our whole nation. But the king was infuriated and treated him worse than the others, being embittered at his mockery. So he passed away unpolluted, trusting firmly in the Lord. Last of all, the mother met her end after her sons. So much then for the eating of sacrifices and excessive barbaries. Again, that was the second book of Maccabees, and this is the story of a Hebrew woman and her 7 sons. Now, believers, my question to you is this. Why is it a debate if we should eat pork or not? Was it not good enough that through Moses and the laws, we were told we should not eat it? That wasn't good enough for you. That's fine. Most people who go against this point will say, well, that was the Old Testament. Well, now we're in the book of Maccabees. Okay? So let's throw that Old Testament thing out the window. Again, Christ didn't come to change the laws. And if he did, why are these people willing to lose their lives? And not just people. This is a woman and her 7 sons, ranging in age. Why are they so hell-bent on not eating swine if it's okay to eat swine? These are the questions you have to ask yourself. If you listen to the story, it repeatedly tells you they didn't want to defile their body. They didn't want to be polluted. Eleazar, whom you can find in your regular KJV, in his 90s, he thought it'd be better to go ahead, and I totally agree, die for the right reason. Most of you today would pick up that pork chop or whatever it may be and eat it. Easy peasy, no problem. Most people don't have the gumption, the intestinal fortitude to stare death in the eyes and reject something as simple as a piece of pork. This shows how dedicated these people were, and it also shows how evil the other people were. The other side, Antiochus and his crew. This should be a very sobering story. This should go ahead and dispel the debate. Pork is not good for you. It may taste good, as it was stated in the story, for the natural love of life. But is it worth that? I don't know, guys. This is what I do know. If you're able to, put it down, put it away, because it defiles your body. It pollutes your temple. I'm not telling anybody what to do, and I'm not better than anybody else. I'd like to say thank you for listening to my video. Please like, share, subscribe. And y'all be blessed, man. I really appreciate it. May the Most High be with you. I'm gone.